for that. We've never had this situation occur before. So welcome, everybody. We've got an exciting meeting this month. I hope that everyone's having a nice holiday. We missed you during the holiday season. And I hope that the new year is moving along. Obviously, there's a lot to be discussed because we do have the new port director coming on as well. So I'm going to go ahead at 7:31 and call this meeting to order. We will see if there is anybody who read and has any corrections to the minutes from the December meeting, which was the combined November and December meeting of December 4th. Any corrections there? Nope. Okay. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Thanks, Edie. And on we go. Do we have police officers here today?
I did not see them.
Not at this time.
I didn't see anybody.
Okay, so what we generally do, for those of you who've not been with us before, is we just move forward with the meeting. Right now, the police are, of course, overwhelmed, and we consider ourselves lucky when they find exhausted time to meet us. So we move forward with the meeting. If the police come, we stop what we're doing. We listen to their report and then go back to the meeting. So I'm going to skip that presentation for now. I'm going to go ahead and cover a few things on the president's report. As I mentioned in the newsletter, we were disappointed to find from the city that the street lighting that was pretty much supposed along Canal and I think areas of Girard as well, that was supposed to be restored as we speak, now has hit a financial glitch. And once again, we do not have an answer as to when the lights are going to be repaired. That street lighting is ready. It has been made ready for the new wiring and the new lighting to go up. So we're halfway there. The other half of that, of course, is the then make it work. And that part is apparently on hold because something happened to that money. I'll let you know what I know when I know it. It started really positive, then it was vague, and now we're all frustrated again. And I do have better news about the pump station or the lift station at the corner of Brickyard Cove and Gorman Drive. It is a disastrous, messy eyesore. And I just spoke to Marcia Valier. I want to point out that Marcia Valier's finished with that project. Her contract is over. But because she is who she is and she loves our community and she's a member of the community, she is continuing to liaise with the city on this. So I'm grateful for that, because if we had to wait for Public Works, we might never really get an answer. I want to assure you that several members of the board, including myself, are in constant contact, almost ad nauseum, with the city, and we simply can't get answers. So according to Marcia a few minutes ago, there is funding for the pump station, and they will be moving forward. She just attended a meeting today. So I don't know exactly, nor did she, how long the contractors of Veolia are going to take to finish it, but it's back up and running again after being on hold. And she will make a brief presentation. She has some ideas to beautify that project. And what we will probably do is, what I've asked her, what I thought would be a good idea, is to come up with a few ideas that we can look at. And then let Edie and I send it out to the community and let you actually have it in front of you and vote by email, so that you have time to compare and contrast the suggestions. This is her idea. I think anyone who knows Marcia Valier knows that she is one of the top people in the country at what she does. So I'm really excited about the possibility that this disastrous mess might come to fruition. and the nearly $400,000 that we paid Veolia to stand with a clipboard and supervise it might pay off at some point. Um, Speaking of Marcia Valier and seeing the charming face of Marin Hurlbut, who on my screen is sitting right next to me, which thrills me no end. I know it's different on every screen. For those of you driven by Judge Cowell Park, you can see the difference when the Hurlbut Benevolent Foundation spearheads a project versus when the bureaucrats spearhead a project, because that corner of Carroll Park and the repair and rejuvenation of that area is moving at record speed. In 1 week, they cleared the area. They have laid the hardscape for the sidewalks. I happened to see David Rogers, our park and representative today. They're getting ready to plant the corner between the sidewalk and the very corner, the tip-top corner. The area behind the sidewalk will be done in stages, but they are actually prepared to do that. And Marin mentioned that David, who is a huge ally of our community, has actually volunteered to go and physically choose the plants to make sure that he can get the healthiest specimen. So I'm really excited about that progress. Marin, thank you 1,000 times. All of the benches have been sponsored, including the special bench that will be dedicated to Maxine. That was going to be a surprise, and somebody let the cat out of the bag. So I saw Maxine today, and she was really excited that she's going to have her dedicated bench. I will ask neighbors to please, let's not talk too much more about that until we have all the game plans so that we can really present a nice surprise to her. And so Marin, during Richmond tennis, if you have any updates, if there's any more than what I said, you can toss that in at that time. Dumpster day, save the date. March 1st, same as usual, Saturday, March 1st. Dumpster day will start at 8 a.m. and we've never had to shut it down before noon. So it should run until noon unless for some reason the dumpsters are filled. And we'll be sending out, first of all, the city will be mailing you postcards to most of your homes, and we'll be putting out the information as well. We line up on Cutting Boulevard alongside Judge Carroll Park and the parking lot of the elementary school. We'll make a right-hand turn onto Wine Street, and you can dispose of all your dumpster stuff. We had good success last year with sweet, charming, and yet assertive Anna, our secretary. And we are going to ask again for donations. They're completely optional because the dumpster day is free. But I'd like you to know that the PRNC is we don't have much of a choice. The city tells us we're going to do it. And we do need to try to do a little fundraising. And throughout this year, you're going to see a lot of PRNC public service projects and some other exciting things which we'll discuss next month. And so if you got an extra few dollars to drop in our bucket, we would appreciate it. At very least, it pays for the coffee and Danish for the volunteers. If you are able-bodied and around on March 1st and would like to help us, we can always use a couple of extra hands. We're under control. And the officers can handle it, but the more volunteers we have, the more quickly we can help our neighbors, particularly our senior neighbors, to unload their cars, which is not something that the other neighborhoods do. But we've always been able to actually physically help. I know that that's Eric's favorite thing of the year because he just loves to toss stuff. So anyway, that's good news. Layla's asking about a shredding day. That shredding day was provided as a gift last year by Susan Coity of Compass Realty. That was a gift to the community, and that is not part of our regular services, but let me ask around and see if we can maybe offer some solution. for that. That's a good question, Leila. So that's it for my notes. And I see is we have a couple of officers who are out. So let's see where we go. Margie, are you here? Okay.
I don't
So
see
I'll
that.
do Margie's report for her. Um, what we're going to do now, we realize we've been telling you how much we brought in, but we're not telling you what goes out. And so I think that it's more important that the community know what the money is being spent on. We know that when people pay their dues, the money comes in. So the only expense that we have that is going on right now is less than $100 that the PRNC paid for their dues for the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council. So that's the umbrella group under which we fall, and we pay a small fee to stay active as a neighborhood council. So I don't see any major expenses going out. There's nothing weird. And then moving forward, if we're paying $1,600 for spring fling or $400 to hire a DJ, we'll go ahead and report those things. Eric, any news for us?
Yes, good evening. So we do not have any new members since our last meeting. We're still at 191 paid and active members, but we did have a number of members renew their membership and make those payments. So thank you. We appreciate that.
Great, thanks, Eric. That was really brief. I'm trying to see if anything's come in about as I mentioned, we had a cutoff of the LUDRC meeting. So I'm just waiting to receive a text of some kind to see what happens. So I hate to be rude. All right. All right, we can get going a little bit early. I'd like to introduce the community to our new port director and welcome him to the neighborhood. The bulk of the port, I think, actually falls into Point Richmond. And there are some exciting changes. And I know that Mr. Gerard, may I call you Charles? You're muted.
So, yes, you may.
Thanks. Charles, welcome to the hood. We're really
Thank you.
glad to have somebody in that position. It's been blank for too long. I know you have a presentation, so I'd like to just let you get started so that we have more time for questions and comments afterwards.
Okay, happy to do so. So, good evening, everybody. There's a good crowd here, so that's kind of nice to see. And let me see if I can share my screen and run through this. Okay. Phil, do you see the presentation?
Yep, here it comes.
Okay, and if I go to present mode, okay, I can still see the participants. Okay, we're sort of a Teams shop more than Zoom. So yeah. So just to start, I'll run through an introduction myself and talk a little bit about the team that is coming together at the Port of Richmond. So I joined the port about a year and 3 months ago. And as Phil mentioned, yeah, there was sort of an empty seat or a few empty seats at the port. A little bit about me. I've been working in kind of the maritime industry for my career. I attended a maritime college. I spent several years working on ships. I worked on container ships and oil tankers and product tankers, and mostly I worked on liquefied natural gas carriers in East Asia. After several years of shipping out and going back and forth to school, I joined a technology company based in Oakland in the late 90s, 99, a company called Navis. And Navis provides enterprise software to shipping lines and marine terminals. And I had a pretty good run for about 20 to 22 years at Navis. And I worked with ports and terminals around the globe. I had a couple assignments in Asia and did a lot of work in Asia. I lived in Hong Kong. And then I was back in Oakland for several years. And then I went to Singapore for a few years. And then I was in transition after some private equity group acquired that company, and they made changes. I was actually in touch with the Port of Oakland about a position, and someone at the port had said, "Hey, Richmond needs a port director," and I sort of took a look at that opportunity, and finalized the process with the city of Richmond and joined in October. So I'll pause there for the purpose of just introducing some of the team, and I'll also say that at present we don't have a marketing manager or a marketing person, so the slides I present are my slides, and I usually kind of just keep them briefer and to the point without a lot of fancy stuff on them. But first, I'll have Lizette say hello, and Lizette's is from Economic Development and has been helping out the port for a few years. Lizette, I think you're online.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. Nice to be invited to the neighborhood council. And just like Charles said, been here for a few years. I love the port, and I would love to support all you guys in your efforts. Thank you.
Kyle, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I hope my mic is working. Good evening, everyone.
It
My
is.
name is Kyle. I'm a management analyst with the Port of Richmond. I just started full-time with the port earlier this month, but I've been with the City of Richmond Economic Development for the past 3 years. Thank you.
So as you may surmise, I'm stealing Lizette and Kyle from the Economic Development Department, and it's good just to have some extra feet on the ground. I think Robert Stevens is also on the call. Robert is not a city employee; he's a contract engineer. He runs his own engineering business, but has a lot of history with the city and the port. So, Robert, are you there?
I am. Hello, everybody. I'm your neighbor at 121 Park Place, so come visit me.
Okay, thanks, Robert. And I, if I didn't mention, I do see some familiar names and faces. So my intention today is just really to go through an overview of the port, and share what I've learned. I'll just say the past year was probably less engagement than we might normally like to see, but we were drinking from the fire hose. The mayor had us involved in some training programs around city leadership and innovation, and we have been and still are tying up a number of loose ends related to port projects and the facilities. So the first point I'll make is just the port's an enterprise fund within the city, and in a nutshell, an enterprise fund is just a self-sustaining business that's owned by the city of Richmond. We don't take revenue from the general fund, so we don't take or contribute to the tax fund that the city uses to manage its operations. We generate money through the properties that we own, either through some shipping tariffs. So the facilities that are importing cargo, for example, pay wharfage and dockage. They'll pay some storage fees for cargo on their apron. But much of the Port of Richmond is really managed through a lease. We're what you would call a landlord port. And so we're in the business of leasing those properties to our tenants. The money we do generate then pays our salaries, the expenses we incur at the port. One of the objectives I'll mention is we're trying to build a stronger balance sheet and savings account as we pursue capital projects and other improvement projects. So even though we're an enterprise fund within the city, which gives us a little bit of autonomy in terms of how our finances are managed, we're really embedded in city management. So I'm a City of Richmond employee, as are my colleagues. We sit under the Economic Development Department. So Nanette Beecham is the Director of Economic Development, and she oversees six divisions within economic development, of which the port is one of those divisions. But I'll say from my experience, I have great access in sort of a matrix organization. I'm part of the management leadership team. So I have regular encounters with the city manager as well as other colleagues in other departments. And having spent a year in a public service and a municipal government, I'll say there's a very strong and vested team across the city of Richmond. So it's been a good experience from that perspective. The mission statement, which hasn't really been become official or publicized, is really the Port of Richmond is focused on our assets and taking advantage of the strategic location that we have in the Bay Area and an engaged workforce that we want to grow. And as the mayor put it to me early in my tenure, he really wants the port to be an economic driver for the city of Richmond. So how can we help our tenants and the port expand, bring businesses into the city, and really develop a working waterfront operation. We're focused on safety and security of the facilities. That's important to our tenants and to our retention. And we're very interested in companies that support maritime trades and services. The Richmond residents, tenants, and local business, they should enjoy the benefit of a healthy and well-managed port operation, in my opinion. And we talk about being anchored in pride and purpose, and just an indication of how close we are to the city and how we work for the city and want to enhance and provide benefit to the city. The key, some key tenets or key principles that I outlined somewhat early in my engagement with the city and the port, and focused on my early observations, were that we want to focus on safety and security around the port, financial and economic growth, environmental stewardship, and I'll mention again, just we really want to be Richmond's port. We want the residents and our neighbors and the employees and our tenants to have some pride in the port, to help us keep the port clean and safe, and to keep the port open for access by the public. So we often say the Port of Richmond is quite unique, and it is. So whenever we talk about being a port, most people that I talk to think about shipping operations and importing and exporting operations. Within the city of Richmond, I'll also refer to the geographic port and the public port that's owned by the city of Richmond. So the geographic port is a substantial shipping port. But when we talk about the city-owned terminals and the city port of Richmond, we have two operations that are shipping oriented. One is AAK. It used to be called Cal Oils. They import palm oil from Malaysia. They get about one ship a month. And they are on the east side of the Harbor Channel. The other one that's more visible is auto warehousing. They receive about 60 ships a year and bring in about 80,000 automobiles a year that get loaded onto the on-dock rail facilities. And so that's our other shipping operation. But much of the port property, and we have a higher number of tenants at the port that I call service providers or mission critical service providers to the marine industry and to the broader Bay Area. So, for example, we have two tugboat companies, Foss Tugs and Sauce Brothers, that operate out of city-owned terminals. The Marine Spill Response Corporation and the National Response Corporation operate out of the Port of Richmond. We have some companies such as Alcatraz Cruises. They don't run passengers. out of the port, but they use some facilities for layberthing and maintenance of their vessels. We have the Dutra Group that provides engineering services and dredging services throughout the Bay Area. Interesting, we also have Manson Construction, probably the two largest dredging companies are based in Richmond. Manson is on private property inside the geographic port. So anyway, when I talk about the port, it's important for me for people to recognize that we're really a very strong services provider to the industry. Also, when I'm talking about the port, I like to talk about our geographic location and strategic location. So we really are very central to the Bay Area, north and south. To get to the Port of Richmond, a ship only has to come in or out or under one bridge. Every other port requires a two-bridge transit, which nobody might have thought of a couple of years ago, but after the incident in Baltimore, it's a consideration. And as I said, we have two tugboat companies. So our location for the service providers that need to get in and around the bay is very good. And then Richmond has tremendous access from two Class 1 railroads, BNSF and UP. And we also sit on the East Bay side of the San Francisco Bay, which has sort of connectivity advantages from interstate highways. I often mention as well, there's a really strong maritime history within the city and Port of Richmond. Many of you probably know this history better than I. And we get a lot of attention from the World War II shipbuilding era, but there was a lot of marine and maritime business within Richmond prior to the Second World War. So when we tell the story of the port, this is an important one for me and for us. And obviously, one of our focuses on workforce development and becoming an economic engine for the city. So I think it's important to look at the accomplishments of the past. So I mentioned when we that we have a sort of a unique environment within Richmond because the port and the city do not own all of the facilities as they might in San Francisco or LA Long Beach or in Oakland. There's not a designated port board or commission, which kind of takes us a couple steps back to the organization of the port. But we're certainly an integral part of what's happening in our central to the geographic port area. So the preponderance of our operation are in the Harbor Channel. And this just gives you a quick snapshot view of the operations in and around the Port of Richmond. So on the west side, we'll go through this in more detail, but the auto terminal and the graving basins, and as you go up the east side of the channel, there's some aggregates business, Kinder Morgan, Phillips 76. Deep in the channel, there's the marine trades business, which I think is also a tremendous asset for the Port of Richmond. So we have a lot of skilled labor in the marine and maritime trades. And then as you come out the east side of the channel towards the Ford building, again, some private operations, but then we have Terminal 2, Terminal 3, the WETA parking lot, the ferry parking lot, and the ferry operations. The ferry is not part of the port. They sit on city real estate, but we're not managing or overseeing that operation. So quickly, I'll try to keep us moving. Point Potrero Marine Terminal, we have several facilities that we lease. The largest is the auto importing operation, but we also lease out the graving basins. Our tenant Dutra just recently expanded from Basin 2 into Basin 2 and Basin 1. They also lease some commercial space across the street. And then we have MSRC and Foss on the finger piers. We have the Red Oak Victory. We have Alcatraz Cruises as well as in the basin. Terminals 2 and Terminal 3 are on the east side of the Harbor Channel. Terminal 2 is leased to AAK, as mentioned, formerly Cal Oils. Terminal 3, I'm sure many of you have driven past. We have a master tenant there, Brookfield. Brookfield is finalizing the construction of a 200,000 square foot warehouse and distribution facility. They also will manage the pier and wharf space at Terminal 3. There was an initiative for them to have a subtenant called Moxion. That Moxion has run into troubles and is in Chapter 11 proceedings. So Brookfield, our master tenant, still is completing the construction, and they're looking for a new subtenant. So we're in close touch with Brookfield on this project. We also have Terminal 4 that is out at Point San Pablo. We have a tenant at Terminal 4 that uses that property for storage, subleasing for storage sites. It's divided up into smaller parcels that he manages. Last year, we did provide some temporary use permit for what's called Good Hot Sauna. We had some other businesses that were operating there that left, but we've allowed the temporary use permit process to allow some different operations to run and generate revenue at Terminal 4. We like having a tenant out there that provides some safety, security, some abatement to trash and the maintenance of the property. So that property is in good hands. There was a major project that's been taking place for a year plus, and that is the wharf removal along this western edge of Terminal 4. So there was some old creosote pilings and a derelict wharf that have been removed. The shoreline has been shored up again with rocks and riprap. And there's been eelgrass has been planted and some oyster reef balls there. And the next phase of that project is really just going into a monitoring phase over several years where the construction is complete. I think the cleanup from the construction is probably complete, and we'll start a monitoring process for that shoreline. I'm going to read a statement for Terminal 1, and I know there may be some questions on Terminal 1, and there have been a number that have been sent through to me and City Council. So let me just read this, and I'll answer questions at the end as best I can, but I'll probably limit commentary. So the port acknowledges the community interest regarding the future use of Terminal 1. At this time, the discussions surrounding the contracted development of Terminal 1 remain under review by City Council and the City Attorney. No final determinations have been made, not to my knowledge anyway. Presently, there's no plans or proposals for Terminal 1 outside of the previous plan and proposal, which is under discussion. Should a decision be reached on the current case that opens Terminal 1 for alternative use, for development or different land use cases, the port is certainly committed to ensuring a fully open and transparent process. The process will include the community stakeholders, city management, City Council, and will ensure that all voices are heard and considered. The port remains dedicated to responsible development that aligns with the best interest of the city of Richmond and its residents. And then just to close, sort of the key tenets again. So as we take on projects, we have a list of many, all in various stages of initiation, some that we're eager to initiate, but have not yet started. But I try to keep these principles in mind with every project that we undertake. Again, safety and security, financial and economic growth, environmental stewardship, and pride and purpose and engagement with the community. So one, just to name a few of the projects, what we've been calling pavements and gates. If you've driven on Canal, you may notice that in some of the turnouts, we've installed berms. We've put some gates up to close off some parking areas and some open roads that were used for sideshows and poor driving behavior. So this project is still underway. It's included some other engineering projects, such as moving a fire main by the Red Oak, and some other water management piping work that we had to undertake. We're certainly eager to see it get finalized, and we're making good progress. The berms, for example, need to get painted white so they're more visible. But our objective there is really traffic calming to make Canal Boulevard safer and to slow down the traffic. Related to that, there's been, it's tempered off, but we had a terrible problem with copper theft in the first half of last year. Almost weekly, we had an incident in and around the port. We've had some break-ins to our tenants' properties. We've had a number of auto incidents related to driving behavior as well. So we're in the process of doing a CEPTED process with Richmond Police Department. That process has started, should wrap up within the month of February. We have some obligations to the California Air Resource Board regarding ship emissions for the ro-ro vessels that come into the Port of Richmond. We're behind the curve on this, but it's a complicated and comprehensive regulatory environment that we're working to come into compliance with. That's consuming a lot of our attention. We also have selected an engineering firm, actually two engineering firms, that will help us with an engineering assessment of our facilities. We have a lot of old infrastructure, and we want to know and better understand the condition of the infrastructure that we have and that we're sitting on. We deployed flock cameras that are also used by RPD. Again, this was sort of the prioritization of safety and security in and around the port. We have some electrical work to get those cameras, all of them, up and running. And so we're working through that the electrical upgrades and some maintenance repair. Unfortunately, some of the electrical components are down again because of theft. There's dredging happening in the Harbor Channel today. They're dredging the federal channel, which is completed by the Army Corps of Engineers. We have some dredging to do alongside the city berths. We're a little bit behind the ball on that as well, but working through the contracts to get some dredging done at our city berths. And then we are, and certainly council and the mayor are eager to get a couple of our historical buildings on the property market and bring someone in to help us get some better utilization out of the cafeteria building and the general warehouse. So I'll gladly stop talking there for a few minutes. And Phil, I'll kind of hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Charles. That was really comprehensive in a short period of time. Folks, I know we have a lot of questions. First, I do want to say that the LUDRC vote has been tabled. The meeting concerning, this is unrelated, Charles, to what you're saying.
Okay.
The meeting concerning the Western Drive building projects, we're going to need to pick up one or more meetings on that. So that's not going to happen this evening. And then I am going to start with a allowing Lisa Johnson to speak because she's been so involved in the port project for the last 10 years. Then we're going to have any brief questions that we might have from Jonathan Livingston, who is also pretty tied in. Then I see Bruce has his hand up, Bruce Baird. And so do raise your hand if you can. If you don't know how to do that, you just go down to the bottom of your screen where there's a little smiley face and it says reactions, and raise your hand, and then you'll be put. I see Sally has her hand up. You'll be put at the front of the queue. I know, Lisa, that you had prepared a couple of questions, and for those of you who may not be aware, Lisa is no longer a member of the board of directors of the PRNC, but she is an ad hoc committee member dealing with helping us communicate with the city. So that's why I'm going to ask her to speak ahead. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Philip. And thanks, Charles, for coming and speaking tonight. It's much appreciated. And I'm sure the community's thankful to meet, put a face to the name, and hear from you. So I've written out what I want to say to try to be concise and respectful of the time. So I'm going to read what I'm saying. So I'd like to first address two long overdue issues on Canal Boulevard, which serves as the main gateway to the port and one of only two access points to the cove. First, while progress is finally and thankfully, yay, being made on street safety and traffic calming, city staff committed to restoring lighting along Canal and Cutting Boulevard from Canal to Hoffman by December of last year. However, we were recently informed that only one side of Cutting would be done due to a sudden funding shortfall. This delay is concerning, especially given that the lights have been out for over 3 years, and the recent fatality on Canal further underscores the urgency. Additionally, the BNSF lighting in the rail yard on port property is blinding to drivers, particularly eastbound travelers at night heading to the port, and especially when it is raining. Despite years of requests, no light shields have been installed, exacerbating this safety risk. Second, regarding the port's tenant and the Honda Port of Entry project approved in 2008, the CEQA MMRP requires 24/7 ingress and egress, which has not been met. After reviewing Public Record Act documents, it's clear the community is frustrated by the ongoing misinformation and lack of action on this matter. To put it succinctly, we are being gaslit. Since this project falls under your purview, the community is requesting your assistance in addressing these critical public safety issues. Due to the shortness in time this evening, my suggestion is that there needs to be a focused meeting with a few members of the community who are well-versed on the MMRP to review those deficiencies, as well as the associated emergency response plan and its annual requirements that, to my knowledge, are also not being met. In light of the LA fires, this is a huge issue. We have over 400 tanks in that area. We are in currently a very high fire severity zone. This lack of 24/7 access off of Canal is huge. So we are asking Councilmember Zepeda for his support and your support to secure the necessary funding and ensure the lighting is restored, that BNSF lights are shielded, and that 24/7 emergency access is established in a timely manner. And I want to close by saying, I want to highlight that one of Richmond's most significant challenges at City Hall is the continued and ongoing failure to engage key stakeholders in critical projects and discussions from the beginning through to implementation, regulation, and oversight. The city has been discussing plans for the port for the past 2+ years, yet one crucial group, the residents that surround this port, have been deliberately excluded from those discussions. This is a well-organized and informed community, and it's clear that projects are more likely to succeed and not be met with stiff opposition when their voices are heard and respected from the outset. Contrary to the statement you read, it is unfortunately the antithesis to what has transpired to date. So we're at a crossroads, and it's time that the city correct this approach and ensure meaningful engagement going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Feel free to send me your written comment if you want. And some of those comments I've certainly heard before. I guess the one item that sort of sticks out for me is the delineation of the port property from Cutting Boulevard and other areas. And so, as I mentioned, there's sort of the geographic port property or the geographic port, and then there's the facilities that we own, and largely what you're talking about does some of that is on the port. Part of our strategy with cleaning up the traffic calming around the port area and Point Potrero Marine Terminal is by taking away that area. We hopefully will help improve the traffic on Canal Boulevard that is not on the port, and the BNSF yard. So BNSF trains do come out to the port and go on to rail spurs on the AWC, the auto importing business. The BNSF yard that's on the corner of Canal and Cutting is not a port property, and is not under our mandate at the port to manage. So just to clarify that to that comment. But if you send through your written comments, like I said, I've seen and heard of some of them before, and happy to help where we best can.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. And of course, the PRNC working with Caesar Zapata, who I think is still on the meeting, will facilitate any meetings.
Okay.
Generally we're doing smaller meetings now, and then we come to the general membership and the general public after we've kind of
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I know council member Zapata is also very busy. We do try to connect on a regular basis and keep him well appraised of what's happening at the port. Phil, just so you know, I know there's a lot of comments in the chat, and I'm a little bit single-threaded, so I'm listening and talking. I'm not gonna try to read those right now unless you want me to go through.
What I'm going to do, Charles, is I'll monitor the comments, and if we have time at the end, I'll address those. If not, we can always address them by email, and I can just update in future meetings.
Okay.
Jonathan, did you have any quick questions before we go to the others?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hey, Jonathan.
Great. Well, good to see you again, Charles. I'm glad you can make it. On behalf of a huge majority of my fellow Point Richmond and Cove residents, we are pleased that you came to the PRNC to discuss the port activities. It's great. It's about time. The port and its activities are part and parcel of our lives out here, and we engage in your port daily. Our collective concerns are many regarding the port. However, I want to focus on Terminal 1 right now. There have been numerous comments from the City Council that have mentioned that the city may want to use Terminal 1 as an active commercial port and in lieu of the proposed residential projects. Let's be clear. No citizen who lives in the Point or the Cove wants the port use at that site. No one. T1 is isolated from the active port by a mile or more. It has no rail service. It's limited truck service. It's too shallow for most commercial vessels. Is surrounded by sensitive receptors. By that, I mean the older citizens. It's zoned for residential use, has a general plan designation of residential. It is in disrepair, structurally unsound, unsuited for any maritime commercial use, and offers little in the way of potential revenue generation. And given the enormous cost and debt service the city would have to endure to have this facility revert to the port use. Timing. If the city still wants to ignore all the above comments, the City Council chooses on rezoning an application. The timing of a rezone and the general plan change would trigger a costly and years-long EIR and public review that would most likely reveal unmitigatable environmental impacts and lead to a long legal challenges and millions of dollars. And no one wants that. We all want the blighted site cleaned up and become a contributing development to the welfare of the people of Richmond. So in summary, Director Gerard, happy you agreed to meet with the PRNC and hope you can forward to the mayor and city council our negative feelings regarding any commercial use on Terminal 1 property and remind that the citizens of Richmond should have a voice in the future of their city, and we do not want port use on T1. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay.
We're running a little late, so I'm going to go ahead and take the 4 hands that I see up and ask the comments be brief so that we can move on with the meeting. We can certainly, I think Charles is willing to come back in the future. We can certainly get an update from him or from Cesar Zepeda in future meetings. Bruce Baer, you have your hand up?
I do, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Bruce.
Hi, Charles. Two very short questions. First, you mentioned federal Army Corps dredging in the federal channels. Does the city's Port of Richmond or other port operators contribute financially to that Army Corps work? And I'll throw out the second question. There's some very derelict buildings, roofless, on the southern side of Terminal 2. It might be. I'm not sure whether it's part of Terminal 2. I wonder if you could tell us what this situation is there.
Okay, so good question. So, no, we don't fund the federal channel dredging. That's completed by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's federally funded. We claim a deep water port and access in Richmond, so they dredge those channels to 37 feet. We are, however, responsible to dredge alongside the wharfs, and Robert may need to remind me 100 feet or 150 feet approximately out from the wharf. So between the wharf and what's considered the federal channel, we fund that dredging. Yeah, the Terminal 2, which sits next to the new development, next to Sauce Brothers and the new development by Brookfield. Yeah, there's a derelict warehouse out there with the roof falling in. That's parallel to the waterway. There's another warehouse that's perpendicular. The warehouse that's perpendicular is used. There's some subleasing activity in there for storage. And Bruce, I don't have an answer for the one that's coming down. It's certainly on the list. It's an eyesore. The tenant that leases Terminal 2 basically uses it for wharf space, and they have a piping mechanism to bring palm oil to their private facility next door. I'm open to ideas. When I talk with real estate people or developers, I pick their brain about that property, but I don't have an answer, and I have to be honest, it's not immediately on the radar today, but I'm certainly open to hear any good ideas you may have.
Okay, thanks for the
And
answers.
sorry, Bruce, in the chat, is Elizabeth
Lizette?
Zepeda?
Yes.
Lizette Zepedas.
Yes.
Right. You just mentioned that there's litigation concerning that property
No, that's Riggers. I was answering somebody with Riggers.
in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Go. I'm sorry, Bruce.
No, that's
to
okay.
interrupt.
Thank you, Charles.
Is that it? Bruce,
From me, yes. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Bruce.
Sally.
Thanks very much for coming. I'm wondering what kinds of changes do you see for the port in preparing for sea level rise? Can you just kind of give us a general idea? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sally, and I don't have a great answer. The city is undertaking a sea level rise study, and that was funded, and most recently, the funding for that project is being expanded to include the port properties. Lizette can chime in and either correct me or confirm if that was completed yet. But the next step for us, if we're not able to sort of pony on this city sea level rise study, we'll have to allocate some budget and undertake that. I'm not an expert on sea level rise. Probably our largest concerns are the water table underneath the properties. Our facilities, interestingly, have a lot of what I would call freeboard. If you're out around where the industrial wharfs are, that's not an answer, and it's sort of my personal observation. but we need to dig deeper into that. So, and we will do that.
Yeah, I could follow up. We have I believe the city has engaged a consultant, and late last year we're looking at some dates for the port to participate. So we are in participation. I think the consultant on board is just, you know, looking to conduct just initial introductions and formulate the study for the city. So we're in the preliminary stages, and we will be participating.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kim. Kim?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would like to thank Director Gerard for a very informative presentation. I learned quite a bit about this, and I'm a
Good.
neighbor of the Terminal 1, and I'll keep it short, but I just want to say that that's in a thriving residential and recreational community. And while the port has a proud history of port and industrial activity, that time has passed. And this is now a residential area, and I don't believe it's appropriate to bring industry back into this. We're already overcrowding the ingress and access and egress of this area, and I don't see a future for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kim. Graham, who, just in case you don't know, Charles, is a key player on the Red Oak Victory, as well as Rosie Park. Hi, Graham.
Okay.
First of all, Charles, thank you very much for coming. Just like to briefly mention what Susan was talking about, sea level rise. We were all told to evacuate, last month because of this tidal wave coming through, extreme danger. You know, I would think that would be a huge concern for you guys. And so I would just sort of reinforce what Susan was saying. I have a couple of questions, really, which revolve around Red Oak Victory, Riggers Loft, and the General Warehouse, which you mentioned seemed to be some change in the tenants there. I was under the impression that that was now part of a marijuana growing organization. And I'd just like to get clarity on that. The other two things there, of course, what is any plans for the Red Oak Victory? And also there has been talk about making a docking area there for giant windmills, which strikes me as being a pretty strange idea for Point Richmond, bearing in mind that a lot of the giant windmill manufacturers are now bankrupt. Do you have any comments on those activities and the status of the various leases down there? Thank you.
Yeah, I do. So good questions, and this is really great. Great question. So first, there was a tsunami warning that was generated from an earthquake in Northern California. It included a very comprehensive evacuation alert area that included much of the San Francisco Bay. We received that alert. The Tsunami Warning Center, I think like you, I probably heard about it, you know, just on my phone. Within our port office, our staff went to City Hall. I stayed in and around the port area and was sort of texting and in touch with some council member and also our manager of emergency services. I previously lived in Asia and Hawaii, and I sort of you know, have dealt with tsunami warnings in the past, so I wasn't in a panic situation. And the operators within the port were monitoring the situation. What my understanding, I'm not an authority on this, my understanding was that within a half an hour, we should have received another update from the Tsunami Warning Center. We did not. I was skeptical that there was any real hazard given the sea distance between Eureka and the San Francisco Bay and the geography. And I had some confidence that we would have received an additional warning if it were required and critical. We did get a warning. It was probably like 51 or 52 minutes after the initial warning because I was watching my clock and again in touch with others about what we might expect. So yeah, and we could spend an hour talking just about that. But within an hour, the evacuation notice was de-escalated. So that's one. The general warehouse, prior to my time, I think there was a few different commercial arrangements around the general warehouse. There was a cannabis operation that negotiated a lease, and we're going to do some operations in the general warehouse. That business went bankrupt and left the premises. And there were some contractor liens as a result of the work that they started in that building. Those liens have now expired without any further exercise. So the building is again available for us to evaluate and look at how we might put it on the market. And again, it's on the long list of things we need to do. It's a historic building. So it needs to be handled and developed within the considerations of it being a historic building. The Red Oak Victory, I will share there is a discussion about the Red Oak Victory, one that I'm supportive of. And we're exploring options to move the Red Oak from the graving basin over to an area next to the ferry landing. Next to the WIDA parking lot on that side of the channel. The objective there would be to put the ship in an area closer to Rosie the River Museum and to put it in an area where there's more, where it's more easily accessible to the public and to where there's more foot traffic. So this would be a very long-term endeavor, but we are looking into it. Both the mayor, Mayor Martinez, and our Congressman Garamendi are interested in that move. And when I joined the port, that was certainly already an initial discussion, and I've worked to advance it. But it will be a long, complicated, and significant investment if we were to make that move.
Charles?
Yes, sir.
Would there ever be any funding that we could pursue to actually, I mean, we're probably talking about tens or maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars to actually kind of help the volunteers to maintain and restore the Red Oak Victory? Are you aware of any of that?
I'm not, but we're sort of combing the grant access and the grant options. I will share that probably one of the principal areas that we need to develop in the port is a grant pipeline. So public ports largely live and survive off of grant funding. I know we're going to need significant grant funding for infrastructure repair and refurbishment. And we have not been successful, but it's going to take us a little time to kind of build up the capacity and the right approach. But you're correct. I mean, we're in touch with this is where our congressman may be able to help with some preliminary funding so we can advance some design ideas and some permitting ideas.
Thank you very much.
I know it's quick on time. Let me just mention the windmill. I'll do it in 60 seconds. There is an initiative in California, as there has been on the East Coast, which is further developed to develop offshore wind farms off the coast of Northern California and Southern California. There are leased sectors on the ocean that organizations have signed leases for to develop that. The wind turbines would actually be offshore. But there'll be a huge demand for what I call a waterborne supply chain to provide components, light manufacturing, operations and support. Operations and support being an area where Richmond may be able to participate to support that initiative. The major construction will for the southern sites will probably take place in Long Beach, and the major construction for the northern sites will probably take place in Humboldt. So I'll stop there, but stay tuned. The council and city, the mayor are very interested in us participating in that sort of green economy initiative, which is fine.
Thank you, Charles. And we'll invite you back. And I don't have time to discuss it, but I actually was lucky enough to speak to somebody from the U.S. Coast Guard concerning what you
Okay.
just said. And
Okay.
she wasn't free to speak officially. She said that the Coast Guard is not considering the Port of Richmond under any circumstances for any of that activity. But I'm just telling you an anecdote of a conversation that I had. Thank you, Charles.
Sure.
We kept you a long time up late, and thank you to your staff. And we look forward to hearing from you again. Lisa will write some stuff out, and we'll touch some base on her comments. Thanks again, and welcome to the neighborhood.
Good.
And
Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you.
I'll drop off. All the best.
All right. Thank you all. Okay, let's go on. Sorry, we're running late, but we tend to catch up. And we can. I see a lot of some folks are not here. Charmaine is out of town, so she usually speaks for CERT. Is there anyone else who would like to comment for CERT today? Nope. PRBA is currently on hiatus. Bonnie Joe, I've got a lot of people on my screen. Are you here? Bonnie Joe is not. James Cheserick, would you like to comment anything that's happening with the History Association?
I'd let Jim Davis handle it.
Okie dokie. Margie is not in. Anybody else want to speak for Arts of Point Richmond? We're catching up on time here. Kate said that she was feeling under the weather, so she'd catch up with us next month. See, we're making up our time. Layla, do you have any news from PRAM and or the PTA?
Yes, I do. I'll make it quick. Thanks again to the Gateway Grant. We have been doing some repairs around PRAM. They are also doing a new Mondays at 10 a.m. songs and stories in Spanish with Miss Wendy. They're going to have a Soul Shine drama time workshop for kids 7 to 10 years old on the winter break in February. Check our website for all updates. And the most important is there is a Pilates for PRAM fundraiser February 15th from 3 to 4 p.m. for adults. If you want to come by and get a workout. Thank you guys so much.
Layla, has PRAM officially changed its name, or are we still just calling you PRAM?
We're just calling it PRAM. It is officially the RC Fieldhouse on our nonprofit status and paperwork, but PRAM programming is
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Would anyone like to comment on what's happening with HOAs? Lisa, do you know anything or? Okay, Charmaine is out. See, we're just caught up at 10 minutes. The LUDRC, thank you all for those of you who are new to us who have come in response to the earlier LUDRC meeting. There was a lot to unpack there. And so Rod and I will coordinate an additional meeting, and we'll have as many meetings as necessary before we come before the general membership. So we just picked up 10 minutes. By the way, for those of you who were not aware, that was on 237 Western Drive, and it was the very beginning of a conversation about a single family home on there, on that lot. Maskers, if anyone's involved with Maskers, Jim,
Yes,
thanks, because
I can jump in very quickly.
it's been a long time.
We are about to open our season in 2025 with Calendar Girls on February 7th. And that'll run through March 2nd. So that'll be a comedy. We'd like all of you to come.
Thanks. That sounds fun. Is it themed to the wartime or?
No, it's based on a true story of some women who wanted to raise funds for a nonprofit they were involved in. So they all posed nude for a calendar and then sold the calendars. So that's what happens in the course of the play.
That's hysterical because that's what the PRNC officers will be doing to raise funds.
We didn't mean to
So,
give you any ideas, by the way.
no, really, you don't want to see that. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. And Graham. Thank you, Jim. Graham, updates?
Yes, Phil, thanks. Big thing on the Red Egg Victory is we've got our winter and spring movie schedule in place, and it's revolving around Alfred Hitchcock's movies he made about World War II. And we start off with on the 20th of February, we have Foreign Correspondent. And then on the 20th of March, we have Saboteur. And then on the 17th of April, we have Lifeboat. And if you've never seen Lifeboat, it's well worth watching just to see Tallulah Bankhead having an attack of the vapors in a lifeboat. It is really quite worth watching. We then on the 15th of May, the 18th of May, we have Notorious, Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman. And then, of course, on the 19th of June, we have our annual favorite, Bogart and Bergman and Major Renault in Casablanca. So please join us for those. They're all Alfred Hitchcock movies. They all revolve around World War II. They're great fun. And we just ask for a contribution of $10 on the ship. The movies start at 6:30, and you can board at 6. And we sell drinks and snacks and so on. So please join us. Thank you.
That sounds fun to have a theme this year. Thanks, Graham. Let's see. Women's West Side. I see Diane.
Yes, hi.
Hi, sweetie. It's been a long time.
I know, it's nice to see everybody. Let me go back a little bit. Our 2024 ending, we had a wonderful December holiday luncheon held at Larg. Chose a new home where she provided delicious food. And we sang along to music with Diana Stork's guitar playing. It was wonderful. We also in December were honored to have received the Gateway Foundation grant, and it's to refurbish the plot behind the Point Richmond History Association building. This will be in concurrent with the library garden and will be starting in the spring. And looking forward to working with PRNC in that area of Triangle. It's going to be a great time. January, even though we did not have a meeting, we did have a huge pruning and weeding work day in the Rose Garden and the Indian Statue Garden, which, Philip, you call it the Sentinel now.
That's the official name of that statue, which I think a lot of people don't know.
I know. I thought it was really interesting. That was really nice. Our Leslie Hicks, she's the head person of our gardens right now, and she does a lot of work. So let me invite our first meeting of the new year is Tuesday, February the 4th of 11:30, First United Methodist Church Fellowship Hall. We have a brown bag lunch, dessert and coffees provided by hostesses. And we're going to be celebrating Valentine's Day by bringing Valentine cards and sharing it among each other. But we have a special guest speaker. I don't know if she's still on, our member Karen Buchanan, and the topic is Colorful Women of Richmond. So I think that's going to be exciting. We're always welcoming new ladies, and you can go online, pointrichmond.com /WWIC to learn all about us. Just a reminder, Miller Knox Trash Pickup Day is scheduled for Tuesday, February the 11th, 10 o'clock. We meet at the first entrance to the park, and it's under the leadership of our member, Cheryl Willis. Black bags are provided, gloves and grabbers, so all are welcome. And one other thing, though, Doreen Layton is our president of WWIC, and she cannot come on these Wednesday evenings because of her church choir practice, but she has asked Julie Alexander to be her PR. She's on board. I don't know if she's still on. Julie can say hi. Yes, she is. and she will be filling in, giving reports every month when she's not traveling. And then if not, I can help her. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and welcome, Julie. Maybe we'll hear from you at the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
And we look forward, the PRNC looks forward, for those of you unaware, we're going to beautify the time triangle by carrying through the theme that you see behind the library and the triangle garden, to mostly to cut down on weeds and become more environmentally sensitive to watering. So basically, it's one big project, half of which is being done with Women's West Side funding from the Gateway Foundation, the other half by PRNC funding, and largely actually supervised by Women's West Side because they already have worked with the contractor. So by summertime, we hope to have a refreshed triangle area. The PRNC will be picking up the area around the kiosk on the corner and that ugly dog poop and weedy area behind the fire station. And we're looking at using additional PRNC funding to possibly spread that out even a little bit further while the guys are there with their trucks. So we really look forward to working with Women's West Side. The other thing I want to comment on, Diane, you talked about inviting women. Anyone can do weeding. I am, I think, the first in since 1906. I think I'm the first man who is an official member of the Women's West Side Association. So, whatever your gender or identification, you are welcome to participate in the garden cleanups for sure. So, thank you. Let's see where we are now. We're moving right along. Let's see. I feel like I've forgotten somebody here. Oh, yeah, it looks like I forgot. Maren, are you going to speak for Richmond Tennis or
Sure.
Hurlbut Foundation?
Yeah, first of all, we had a very busy weekend. 4 of the RTA teams went up to Sacramento for regional championships. The first round, we won all 7 of the matches that we participated in. The next round, we had 2 teams winning and going to finals. And in the last round, we couldn't make it be one of our teams going to national, but we do have one RTA member going to nationals. That means we're competing with the highest level people in the entire country playing USTA matches. So we're proud of them. We're proud of them all. We also from the Hurlbut Foundation side, we had a reception for snowball scholarship recipients. We fund the snowball scholarship fund almost exclusively, and we gave $22,000 this year to to 16 of our local scholars who also participate in community services, and they're just great kids. And I'm trying to produce some interest in having these teenagers, whether they're juniors or seniors, work for some of our city organizations, our commissions, and our boards, because we need fresh thoughts on moving our city into bright new futures. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. And I just want to clarify that statement, Maren. And because Maren called me last week and I recommended somebody, so she's actually trying to look for young people, juniors and seniors in high school, who might actually sit on boards or commissions such as the Parks and Recreation Commission. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that statement. I think it's a great idea. They get civics, they get a great resume point for their college or business futures, and we get you know a fresh perspective and not the same old voices. So I think it's a great idea. Thanks so much, Maren, and thanks again for your generosity to our community. We're on ping pong, and then Rosie the Riveter, and we're actually somehow magically going to be on time again.
Okay, well, ping pong has been going well. We've generally had 6 or 7, 8 different people showing up each Monday, so that's worthwhile. And I also have the RNCC report, care of Cordell. He emailed that to me, so I could drop that on you too. So he said that there were 8 on the dais, 14 on Zoom. Assistant Chief Simmons provided a report on the police department goals for 2025. And after the staff reported on their business reports, new business was Cordell suggesting they invite Tammy Edwards to present on her nonprofit organization, Project Mark. Anyway, that's the RNCC. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And for those of you who've asked, Cordell has communications problems. The PRNC has offered to buy him a laptop computer, but that doesn't seem to be the issue. So although he doesn't live in the neighborhood, he feels like he's been around for years. So he's an honorary Point Richmond resident. Thanks for Peter. It's great. And if you can continue to liaise with him, I think that would be wonderful. And then we have Red Oak Victory, and then then we have Rosie the Riveter, and we're back on time again, magically.
Well, I'll try to keep us on time and keep this brief. February, we have a lot of things going on, lectures, presentations, and so on, but let me concentrate on 2 rather unusual things that people might find interesting. On the weekend of February 22nd and 23rd. On the 22nd, the Saturday, is a day of remembrance for Japanese American incarceration. There'll be a series of talks and films on that. And then this is the 25th anniversary of the Visitor Center. And there's a special series of programs all year long, lectures to commemorate that. And on the 23rd, there will be a lecture on Port Chicago, the Port Chicago disaster of July 1944. So those are 2 kind of unusual things we have coming up this next month.
Thanks, Jim. And for those who were not able to attend, I encourage you to take a look at these Red Oak schedules of activities. My husband and I went to Jim Davis's excellent talk on the military and dogs during World War II, and like the nationwide effort to get dogs in the war. And it was both amusing and educational. So keep an eye on Jim. He's really, really good at history stuff. So thanks for
Thank
that
you.
update,
Thank you for the
Jim.
kind words. I appreciate that.
I love listening to you talk, and that dogs thing was over the top. That was unexpected. So we do have some time. We're really running actually 2 minutes early. So are there any hands or anybody who would like to just have public forum or introduce themselves? Any new folks in the meeting?
Let's save the 2 minutes for next meeting.
There you go, Michael. Anybody? I don't see any hands raised. James?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but have you heard anything more on the composting operation?
Okay, thank you. And I will try to remember to put that out in the next newsletter. The composting, the reeking smell that we smell, for those of you who are new, there are 3 distinctive types of smell. Jessie West is here, and she's great on Nextdoor to describe it. She's an expert on this. There is the smell of rotting garbage and organic material. That's what we're smelling from the compost facility at the Republic Services fields on Parr Boulevard. We refer to it as the dump. It is the solid waste transfer facility, and they're supposed to be moving and dealing with this composting material. According to both the Air Quality Board and the Contra Costa County, I'm sorry, Health. I'm sorry, it'll come to me in a moment, the name of the organization. The composting facility is broken down again, as always, for a change, and I think, quite honestly, has been for years. So we're kind of subject to the prevailing winds. If it's cool, if it's foggy, if the winds are moving in the wrong direction, we get that intolerable stench. I think all of us from Point Richmond will agree it was worse this year than it's been in a very long time. Contra Costa Health.
Contra Costa County Health, Environmental Health.
Thank you, Jesse.
Sure.
And so I actually just posted on Nextdoor about it. I am not on Facebook because I would shoot myself. Nextdoor is bad enough. But so all these years, although the Bay Area Air Quality Board has been our go-to, I actually posted and will again make comment about this, James. Thanks. It's a good thing to bring up that they're the ones that manage that. And she told me that you call and they send somebody out. So we do know what the problem is, but there is little accountability. The city does have a mechanism to hold them accountable, and I'll work with council members at PETA to find out where those complaints go. So I'll get that phone number to you all soon. Thanks. It's been nasty this year. Thanks for bringing it up. Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Yeah, just following up. There's an email came around about the moratorium on the Kellovitz sanitary sewer system, and it's expiring. And I wrote to a couple of people in the Public Works Department, you were copied on it, and asked for a couple of answers and so on, and no response. Any idea what's happening?
That would be a Caesar question if he's still with us. Sometimes Caesar's on 5 calls at once.
Philip, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you for Caesar. Thank you for working 24/7.
You're welcome. Thanks, Graham, for that great question. I was actually going to raise my hand to see if I can say a little bit about that. So I've been working on an agenda item and I'm working with staff on 2 points. One of them is a moratorium, but also to allow for construction of houses or anything in there. There will be some limitations, but there's some individuals who bought properties without knowing the city council was going to be putting this moratorium. So I want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to be able to build because they didn't know that this moratorium was happening and they bought this property there. And then that will then look at whether we continue extending the moratorium or not. And to what extent, and then the next steps. So all of this, I'm still working with staff. The first step is to try to allow people to apply to potentially build, because according to the letter from the Baykeeper, we still have a couple more connections that can be done. The city just stopped. But we still have a couple more connections that could have been done to allow for these individuals. And there's not a lot of people, it's just a handful of people to be able to allow them. So we're not going to open it forever. It's just going to be if you had purchased it prior to X date, then allow them to move forward, because while they were purchasing, the previous city council was putting this together and they didn't really get an opportunity to be noticed. So hopefully that there answers a little bit, Graham, but I'm working with staff on the other piece of what's going to happen with the moratorium in general.
Caesar, it's just in general, this Jim Kettleman was meant to be the PR guy, and we've heard nothing. Is the Public Works Department looking at other alternatives, or looking to hire a new contract engineer, or is it just sort of died?
Yes. Yeah. So we have a working group. There's 3 of us in this. It's a wastewater working group, and it's comprised of the mayor, Councilman Robinson and myself, and we've been working on this for a while. So we meet with staff monthly to talk about all these different issues. And one of the previous meetings, I did bring up that we need to look at other options. How do we start maybe removing some of the connections to the Keller Beach sewer line and maybe moving them over to the other sewer line to try to ease a little bit of that. So there's not so much impact. So definitely pushing. This is going to be still a long ways away before any more concrete project comes forward. So right now it's still in concept. I'm making sure that Public Works doesn't just jump and react without knowing which way it's happening, which is what happened previously. So we want to make sure that this new Public Works, along with the community, that we team up and we come up with the best solution from the information that we have.
Caesar, that's great. Thank you. But if you could get this Jim Kettleman, who's meant to be the PR guy, we do have this working group. And it would be great, and I'm sure you agree too, it would be great if we sort of got a communication from him saying, well, something's happening, nothing's happening, or would like to call a meeting to discuss further ideas on the issue.
Graham, I will send an email to Ben Gettleman on behalf of the PRNC saying, hey, constituents are, you're MIA. And I'll copy Caesar on that. And, oftentimes they have nothing to say, but they can have the courtesy, mostly given the tens of thousands of dollars they're paid.
Yeah.
They can have the courtesy to at least give us an update. I agree with you, Graham. Thanks for bringing that up.
And Phil, thank you, and thanks, Caesar, for following up on it too.
Thanks. And I see Susan Glendening, which I just met at the previous meeting about the 237 Western Drive vacant lot. Somebody asked in the comments, about these properties. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Guys owned the land for 30 years. That would be part of this moratorium. So, that's a perfect example of where we're going.
I
with
know,
that.
I know you're out of time. I just want to mention.
No, we're good.
When we bought our house at 34 Montana Street, which was our first fixer-upper, we didn't know it was in the historical protection district, but we were therefore limited to doing any renovations that would have changed the historic nature. And so we adhered to those requirements. Now I'm hearing that some people might be able to connect to the KBSS because they didn't know about it. They bought property and not knowing about the restriction. I think that's just setting the city up for failure and liability for this dilapidated, deteriorating sanitary sewer line that is probably leaking into the bay and causing harm. And I already have information in a different letter, but I'll be watching this issue. I think that if you're letting people connect to this KBSS when it's failing is very, very short-sighted and setting yourself up for failure. Thanks for the time.
No, it's important and it's huge. And that's what they're struggling with because the moratorium does not allow them to. And we're not sure whether or not the moratorium is going to be continued. So it's complicated. If you email me directly, you have my email, right, Susan? I'll hook you in on that. We can add you to that list of people who are getting those emails. It is a fiasco. It's another fiasco of deferred maintenance.
I've been hearing about it, and it is a really big issue because San Francisco Bay is already stressed with nutrients, et cetera, and this is a really big problem. So
it's not just the environmental nightmare. It's it's the city. That's what they're trying to avoid, further environmental nightmare. But it can cost the taxpayers of Richmond and the city millions and millions and millions of dollars a year if they don't get this right. And it can cost the homeowners there more money than they can afford to pay if they don't get it right. And it's lawsuits all around there unless they really get their act together. So
they might just figure out a grant situation or something.
Yeah, and I will say this: a lot of you don't hear about it, and he seldom, if ever, blows his own horn. But Caesar is constantly talking about grants. So he's really tuned into receiving grants. And I do want to remind all of you, I just want to plug Caesar again. I've been attending these meetings for 30 years. And in the 30 years I've been attending these meetings, I have not seen the council, a council member or a member of the city council or mayor, even those who live in our neighborhood, come to the meetings as as much as Caesar has come every year, and he has 7 neighborhoods. So, the mayor's office refuses to even respond to my emails requesting his presence. So I'm really grateful for Caesar, who has a full-time job, a real job in the business world, as well as this. So thanks again. Susan will get you on the mailing list. And everybody will get Ben Gettleman, will wake him up from his long winter's nap. Any more questions or comments? Great, we're pretty much on time, miraculously. Is there any remembrance or celebration? Anybody having a bar mitzvah, a wedding? No? Anybody have to share someone who's left us? All right, well.
Oh, hey, Philip.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Diane.
just have some great news. One of our oldest members is a lovely, lovely lady, and you all know her, Martha Belwatsky. And she is actually now 104 and a half. And I just called her today, and she is starting to do puzzles. I mean, she's just amazing. She got a 300-piece puzzle that she's going to start working on. Anyway, we love her, and I just wanted to bring her up. She's a great lady.
Yeah, my husband and I were at the library today where we had a puzzle exchange. So, and it was mobbed. So we all brought our old puzzles, all of them, only if the pieces were all there. And then we all just threw them on the tables and picked up some, and it was great.
Oh, I'll have to tell her.
So I will volunteer to provide you with some puzzles to give to her, but we'll give her the easy ones. Cecil does the 10,000 piece all white puzzles that drive people crazy.
Okay. Thank you.
He thinks differently. All right. Well, I'm glad that we don't have any sad news to do. And wow, we had over 50 people in this meeting. And I think a lot of it has to do with the port, and some of it has to do with the project on Western. But please share with your friends. If you haven't paid your dues, go on to the pointrichmond.org and use PayPal or get the address and mail us a check. If you have financial hardship, we are delighted to waive your fees, no questions asked, so that you can vote in future meetings, and pass it around. The more we grow this, and I'm proud of our mailing list is up 25%. So I'm really, and that's Edie Sellers a lot, helping to manage a better technology there, making it easier to join. The more of us there are, the more our voices are heard, and we are literally fighting City Hall right now. The council does not want to hear from the neighborhood councils, and it's terrible. They have an agenda, and those of you who saw the meeting a couple weeks ago, where one of the council members rambled on aimlessly about how much money Point Richmond gets, when in fact it's not true. Just look at the condition of our roads and look at the money that's going into her district. So we need to stay strong and make sure our voices are heard. Because that's how democracy works, and that's what the city charter states, and that's why this organization was formed in 1959 as one of the first neighborhood councils. And one last thing before we go on that topic, at our website, just toggle through, there is actually a famous historian or well-known local historian, Lucretia Edwards, wrote a history of the neighborhood councils and how they were formed and how the city council fought them and didn't want to fund them. And this is in 1959. And so when I was reading through that recently, I felt like right now, again, we're fighting for our lives to be heard. And luckily, we do have council members at PETA on our side, but pay attention to your city council meetings and pay attention to when they bypass our voices, because otherwise democracy dies in darkness. So thank you all very much. We'll see you the last Wednesday of next month with exciting updates. And don't forget Dumpster Day on March 1st. And thank you all. We really appreciate it.